speakers for the Breastfeeding Circle, Support, Wisdom, and Real Talk. We are so glad you chose to spend your lunch hour with the Topeka Breastfeeding Coalition for this important panel discussion. This event is for everyone, pregnant and breastfeeding mothers, community members, and professionals, all united by the goal of making sure every family in our community has the resources and knowledge to navigate the breastfeeding journey successfully. This conversation is meant to be exactly what the title says, Real Talk. We're here to support, debunk myths, and share practical wisdom. We have an incredible group of experts and community leaders joining us today, each bringing a unique and vital perspective. I'll introduce them now, and then we'll dive into the topics. Dr. McIntosh is a general pediatrician at Stormont Vail Cotton O'Neill. Dr. McIntosh received her medical degree from the University of Kansas School of Medicine and completed her pediatrics residency training at Indiana University. She joined Stormont Vail in 2018 after returning home to Topeka to practice and to give back to the community in which she was raised. Dr. McIntosh serves on the board of directors for Stormont Vail and is a member of the national and state chapters of the American Academy of Pediatrics. She is married with 2 young daughters. She enjoys cooking, DIY projects, and gardening.
Awesome. And we have Laura Odom, and she is a registered nurse and international board certified lactation consultant with Stormont Vail at the Topeka Campus Breastfeeding Center, and she's worked there for 16 years. She is passionate about teaching and helping parents to learn about caring for and feeding their babies. Laura is a mother to 3 beautiful children whom she nursed for a cumulative of 5.5 years. She wants you to know that every baby, she wants you to know every baby and every journey are different, so don't compare yourself to others or to your own past experiences. You never know what can happen this time. Very true. And then we have Rachel Boyd, hello, who is a mother of 2 girls, ages 2 and 4. Rachel is currently still breastfeeding her 2-year-old with no end in sight. She tandem fed both her daughters for 6.5 months. That is impressive. And stopped breastfeeding her first daughter when she was 3 years old and 2 weeks old. 3 years and 2 weeks old, sorry. And while not always an easy one, Rachel has found immense joy in her journey and loves to support others in starting or continuing their own journey. That's awesome. So we wanted to thank you all for being here. Over the next hour and a half, we will be discussing everything from preparing during the prenatal period to returning to work and pumping to introducing complementary foods. We will save time at the end of session for question and answer, so feel free to jot down any questions that might come up throughout the presentation. And with that, I will pass it along to our speakers.
Thank you. Making sure this is working for the recording. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, there. I heard that one. I don't know where to put it. All right. So we're glad that you're here, whatever your position with supporting breastfeeding for the community, for patients, for yourself and family members and friends. We hope that this will give a little bit more information about what's available in the community, as well as just some kind of basic knowledge that may help you continue supporting others. So the Topeka Breastfeeding Coalition has put this together. We are a chapter of the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition, and we share the mission to improve the health and well-being of Kansans by working collaboratively to promote, protect, and support breastfeeding and human milk feeding. And as they've said, this event is intended to share information with our community that may help families navigate the challenges and achievements of their breastfeeding journeys. So first, we wanted to tell you a little bit about breastfeeding rates in Kansas. This is a handout that you have at your place as well, so that you can refer to it with even more information than I was able to put on the slide. But the State of Breastfeeding in Kansas 2025 shows us the rates of initiation, exclusive feeding at 3 months, 6 months, or any breastfeeding in that 12 months. And as you can see, that we have really great initiation rates. We're very proud of that. It's above national average. It's wonderful. But what we hope to do and provide with this information and just continuing to spread that through the community is increase that rate at 6 months. It seems that many people tend to discontinue breastfeeding or maybe have to do some combo feeding for whatever reasons between initiation and 6 months, and we hope that maybe some knowledge about ways to make returning to work easier, maintaining your lactation once you do return to work, and then what we do once they start eating other foods too. How do we continue providing our milk at that point? Hopefully that will make a difference in maybe next year's rate of breastfeeding in Kansas. We also wanted to share the information about the breastfeeding initiation race and ethnicity. Again, Kansas is really doing very well with encouraging and initiating breastfeeding, and we hope that individuals, healthcare providers, businesses, hospitals, and even state and local governments will continue to keep breastfeeding at the forefront when figuring out how to implement practices that can help them be successful, help their employees be successful, continue breastfeeding as long as they can. We do have lots of breastfeeding support in Shawnee County. We are really lucky to have as much as we do. Both local hospitals offer free prenatal education classes, and both have breastfeeding support clinics that their patients can come to after they've discharged. The OB providers are great support, and doula services. We do have some good and free doula services in Topeka, so that's a really great way to get that at-home help sometimes. And then our wonderful health department and all of the programs they've initiated to support that with home visits and coming back for WIC appointments and that kind of thing. So there is a flyer that the coalition has put together to share all of those options with QR codes to link to those different organizations for their free classes. There's also more handouts on our table here that you are welcome to take as many of on your way out to get signed up for any of those or learn more about it. And then with that, Rachel's gonna take over and do a little bit. You got that one? Can I, is there a button? I can't see.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I am a breastfeeding mother. That's really my only qualification for this. But I have learned a lot in this time, and I've realized a lot of different people struggle with different areas of breastfeeding because of support and everything, and not knowing the benefits of breastfeeding and that type of thing. So, but for the parent, so the mom, reduced risk of breast, ovarian, endometrial, and thyroid cancers, decreased risk of excessive blood loss after delivery, reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, convenient and cost saving, which is actually before I was educated on the benefits of breastfeeding, my motivator, because I thought formula was ridiculously expensive. So I was like, well, let me just try this out. For the baby, it's perfectly matched for nutrition, easy to digest. I know when my kids are sick, they don't stay sick very long, just because they have that milk that's formulated for them. Protects against infections, reduced risk of SIDS, reduced risk of childhood obesity, promotes bonding. That's probably the best part for me. Obviously, all the benefits, the health benefits are really important. But the bond is something that is unbreakable. It's not something that can be replicated. I mean, you're going to bond with your baby either way, but that breastfeeding bond is just something that it's indescribable. So, the first days, babies feed 8 to 12 times in 24 hours. I honestly, thinking back to that, I couldn't put a number on it because it could be every 2 hours. It could be an hour straight of just feeding. Babies, I mean, they're bringing in your milk. You're feeding their little tiny bellies. You're comforting them with it. I mean, it's great. Approximately every 1 to 3 hours. Stomach size is small, perfect for small amounts of colostrum. A thick and rich first milk full of antibodies. And that is generally a different color. So if you ever are pregnant or breastfeeding, and when you first start breastfeeding and you see it a different color and you're like, that doesn't look like milk, it's colostrum, no worries. Because I was like, I don't think it's supposed to look like that. So nothing's wrong. Frequent feedings help to demand an increase of milk volume a little more each day. I think that's where a lot of my success with breastfeeding for so long has come from, is that I did not time it. I did not put it on a schedule, that type of thing. Whenever the baby wanted it, I gave it. And to this day, I mean, I don't pump anymore, but to this day, when I'm with her, we are pretty often feeding. So, and she's 2 now. So, a big increase in milk occurs approximately 3 to 5 days after delivery. Remember, you have milk even if you haven't felt the changes yet. I did not leak during my pregnancy. So if you don't leak during your pregnancy, it's not a bad sign. It's fine. Because I always thought you had to leak during pregnancy. Supply and demand. So the more the baby latches, the more milk you're going to produce. I'm lucky enough to be an oversupplier. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that my first was born at 36 weeks. She was perfectly healthy other than some jaundice, but 36 weekers, they say, sleep a lot. And so there was times where she wouldn't take. And so I had to do a lot of pumping in my first few days, which they don't typically recommend. But to bring that milk in and get it fully in, I had to do a lot of pumping. So, but that kind of helped the supply because I was demanding it. Sleepy baby, hand express after nursing attempts, and offer express colostrum via syringe, cup, spoons, or bottles. Yeah, so interesting. It's a different world when you're first learning to breastfeed and when you've been breastfeeding, but I just remember trying so hard. We used cold rags on her little feet to try to get her to wake up, and that was probably the hardest part for me at the beginning, was just trying to get her to wake up. She was like, I'm sleepy. And I think that's you. Okay, I'm back. Skin to skin. Skin to skin contact is recommended immediately after birth for at least the first hour or until the completion of the first breastfeed. My first daughter latched perfectly when she first came out, and then my second daughter ate for like an hour after she came out. Nobody got to hold her for that first, neither one, because, the hour's important. But it helps baby adjust to life outside the womb and can regulate body temperature, breathing, heart rate, improve oxygenation, and encourages breastfeeding success. The delivery of the placenta signals the body that it's time to make prolactin, the milk-making hormone. Skin-to-skin contact helps release more oxytocin, aka the love hormone, which makes milk flow. Skin-to-skin contact is beneficial for everyone, not just the birthing parent. Support persons should hold baby skin-to-skin to get to know each other as a way to calm baby between feedings. My husband did skin-to-skin with my girls. I don't know if that has anything to do with their bond, but they sometimes seem to like their dad more than me, so think about that. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So yeah, the skin-to-skin contact is a really great way to initiate breastfeeding because your baby's kind of shocked by being born. It's a lot of work to be born for everybody involved. And letting them just be skin-to-skin and hear what they already know, the heart rate that they are familiar with, the breathing, the sound of your voice, it's a very good way to calm them and help them recognize they're still safe and they're still okay. So during that skin-to-skin contact for that first hour or until they're done with that first feeding, it's one of the best ways for them to transition from womb to world. When it comes to latching the baby, if we would just put a baby on a belly right after they're born and let them be, they can figure out how to get to the breast and latch on, which is pretty amazing. They can kind of thrust themselves and almost army crawl up there and look at that bullseye of the areola that's much larger during your pregnancy, so they can see where they're going. They can see like this far, helps them find it. Plus all the smells that come from that is specific to your baby, smells like amniotic fluid and helps them find their way. I think it's okay to help them latch So even though they're capable of some really awesome movements on their own, we can create a position that feels comfortable for both people. It helps to bring the baby to the breast. They have what's called a rooting reflex. You know, you touch their cheek when they're hungry and they're like, oh, I want it, you know, wide open baby bird mouth. And so they don't necessarily know that they need to come forward and get closer to you. And so a very gentle kind of bringing baby to you will help with that deeper latch, which will help with your comfort, and the baby gets more milk. So if it's that sharp sensation that you feel for 10 or 20 seconds, that sharp feeling may tell us that it's actually too shallow of a latch. We really want them to have all of the nipple and then as much areola. Everybody's got a different size. You cannot say the whole areola. It's, you know, some of them are bigger than the baby could maybe fit into their mouth, but they can still have a good latch even if you see a little bit of areola. So all of the nipple and then as much of that as possible helps them get to this part. I'm just going to pause really quick. Can you guys see the slides pretty well, or is the lighting? Okay. So there's some alveoli here that once the baby is beyond the nipple and their mouth is able, their tongue sticks out and massages underneath it, they're able to send signals from this part up here to the breast that says, let all this milk out too, bring it down from there. So it's important that they're deep enough to actually get good milk flow, but also for your comfort. So if it doesn't feel good, you stick your finger in the corner of their mouth and gently pull down to break that latch so they don't stretch you with them as you try again. And then I have my little crocheted breast real quick. Let me grab that. And my baby, which really, I'm not gonna take the time to do it, but if I were feeding this baby, I would take this sleep sack off, I would take the clothes off, I would change a diaper, and I would get them skin to skin, because that's the best way to keep them awake. If we just take a sleepy baby and put him here and be like, oh, he's not hungry, and then you give him to someone else and they're like, where's the food? So you're gonna have a better time of it if you go through all those motions, get them down to their birthday suit next to you. You can have a diaper on so you're, not getting pooped on, but get them skin to skin, it'll help. And then when it comes to finding a position, there's lots of options. This is showing us the cross cradle hold. It's one of my favorites to teach parents in the beginning because it gives you a bit more control. So the baby's gonna be tummy to tummy. Actually, I'm gonna undo just this part and get some arms going. Tummy to tummy with you, and your arm the opposite arm comes up to support their head, neck, and shoulders. And then this arm, I like to kind of say it's like a hug. So we've got a little hug around the side. I'm supporting their head by keeping maybe my middle finger and thumb kind of pointing toward their ears, but my hand's not big enough, but some people have larger hands than me. If you're getting to their cheek, you're gonna distract them, and they're gonna go for that instead. So try to keep it a little bit further back from their cheek as you support their position. And then you can make maybe a C shape or a little bit more of a U shape. It sort of depends on where's your baby's mouth going on which position you're doing. In this cross cradle hold, their mouth kind of comes this way. So I want to support that breast and push forward that tissue in the same shape as my baby's mouth, hence my taco picture. If you think about it, if you just try to shove the taco in and you don't make it fit, it's not gonna be comfortable for you. That shell's gonna get you, and you're not gonna get a lot of food. So if we turn our head to make the taco fit in our mouth a little better without losing the toppings, it works. So think about that when you're trying to help your baby get a latch. Which direction is the taco going? Can we help them get more in there? So what I love about this picture is, this very jaundiced baby, he was interested, but he was calm. And so it helped us to actually, these were parents that took my classes and were like, we'd love to help you with this. Yes, you can take pictures. So Dad's got his hand in there helping hold the baby's hand out of the way, because this one sometimes goes to their cheek and distracts them. And so he occupied that hand but didn't pull it in a direction that was uncomfortable, just kind of gave him something to grip. And then the mom was able to do that kind of C shape, squishing all that tissue forward as much as possible, touch the nipple to the baby's top lip, wait for them to do that big wide mouth, and then a gentle shove into the breast. You do have to sort of hold that compression of the breast for a few seconds while they get organized. If you let go right away, it may slip and they may end up on the tip, and that's just less comfortable and you're starting over. So kind of bear with them, help support the weight of that breast, bring them to you, and remember that deeper is better. Good job, baby.
Laura, can I add something?
Yes.
So when we're discussing latch, obviously Laura's going through lots of different strategies and things to make sure that you're covering when you're doing that. And it's pretty much every time they have to learn, and just like we do.
Yeah.
But I will say, just in general, I think this is often a place where we give up. And so that's why it's really important to be aware of the supports that we have, because I think several, if not most, of the problems with breastfeeding can be addressed with kind of addressing latch, and if a hold works differently or better for this size breast, or maybe the boobs are different sizes, which all of us have a little different size, but and maybe that's the issue. The reason I bring this up here is because there is a lot around in the community about like tongue ties and lip ties, and is that really the issue with the breastfeeding? And there's lots of different opinions on it. There are assessments that can be done, but I would be hesitant to jump to that, because I think a lot of this can be fixed or helped with like latch adjustments and things.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. And we in the clinic say when we're figuring out flange size, which we'll talk more about later, they're sisters, not twins. So yes, they're different. We're not all perfectly symmetrical. So yes, very good points. And I think that's something that we don't have, in the presentation, but wanted to mention, is that there is sometimes social media gets a little bit overwhelming for new parents, because you hear a lot of information that doesn't always apply to every baby and every family and every dyad. So it's important that you do rely on those support people. If you go to your pediatrician, you talk to your lactation support team, and that you have your baby and yourself assessed, rather than assuming that what fit the TikTok star is fitting you to, because we're all different. So this is a way, with that good latch, how can we tell the baby is actually getting some colostrum, transitional milk, mature milk, whatever stage you may be at in those first few days to weeks as it's all becoming established. So what we look for with an exclusively breastfeeding baby in the first few days to tell us that they are transferring milk and they are getting something is that they should have about 1 wet diaper per day of age. So 1 on day 1, 2 on day 2, 3 on day 3. The poops tend to be a lot in the first 24 to 48 hours. Lots of that really dark, sticky meconium, which doesn't smell bad but looks real gross, so it's going to be nice when it's not so sticky, but not so nice because it starts to smell. But it's a really, really great sign that the baby's taking colostrum when you see more of those stools, because it helps to kind of flush out and coat the intestines and protect them from invading organisms. So this perfect milk that you're making is doing so many things for your baby's GI tract. And then we want to watch for nutritive patterns. So this video, I'm going to come over here so I can use the mouse to actually turn it up. Sorry. But not the video. Thank you. It sometimes looks a little blurry when it gets huge like this, but you're gonna be able to see what I'm talking about. So this baby is 10 hours old. I don't know where to go. Walk in front of it. So what we're looking at is this movement in the baby's jaw. He's paused right now. They're allowed to take breaks, that's okay. But then you see that really good jaw motion that's actually massaging the breast at the same time. These are really good signs that this baby is actively nursing and is working to get something, versus sometimes what looks like just tiny little flutters of the mouth. Thank you. Or, they're falling asleep, and then you go to move them and they're like, no, I was doing something. So if you're having just lots of short little fast sucks and lots of long pauses where they're resting, then it's possible that they're not moving as much or being quite as nutritive. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing for the baby to be comforted by nursing and doing that, but before they get to that point, we need to see some good action. We need to see that jaw muscle movement. You may see just a half a second longer drop in the jaw when they're swallowing, and those are some things to watch for during a feeding to be able to say, that was a good feed. Maybe it was 5 minutes long, not 20 minutes long, and that's okay. If it was active and they were moving, and they're eating on demand at least every 2 or 3 hours or every 20 minutes, then we know that they're doing what they can to move that milk. We do expect babies to lose anywhere from 7 to 10% of their birth weight in the first 3 to 5 days of life, and then they should turn around and start gaining about a half an ounce to an ounce a day to tell us that they're averaging good intake in 24 hours. So it takes about 2 weeks to get back to birth weight, as long as they're, checking in. Typically, they'll see their pediatrician within the first week, and I know that both hospitals also set up follow-up appointments to come back within 1 to 2 days for weight checks, jaundice tests, that sort of thing, so we can help intervene sooner if a baby is not gaining as much, or the latch is not as deep, or whatever we can do to improve that. So trust your baby's cues. They're gonna have growth spurts. Like I tell people, it's like pretty much every few days in the first 2 weeks, every couple weeks for the first few months. They just always are growing. You never grow as much as you do in that first year. So I think it's important that just because a baby is nursing more often, you don't then go to, well, I must not have enough. There must be something wrong. It must be me, which is what lots of our brains will do anyway. But that's when you go back to that support and you say, is the baby getting enough? Can we do a test weight where we see how much is being transferred? Is there something that we can do to build the confidence to say, this is how you know your baby's doing well, even though you're having more of that cluster feeding. So trust your baby's cues. If they act hungry, feed them, put them back on there, and then call somebody, get checked out. I left it over here. I think it's your turn. Yes, yeah? I don't know. I'll talk the whole time. You got to take over.
Okay, I don't mind. So I will just say too, I didn't necessarily put it in my bio, but I have breastfed my kiddos. I'm still breastfeeding my 2-year-old. So I will say, if you have questions specifically about return to work or pumping or, all of those things, I'd be happy to answer those. I will say that I had challenges too. I mean, I think it's hard sometimes to maybe take me out of my context as a pediatrician because it doesn't always go perfectly for medical professionals. So there's things like that too that if you have questions about, I'd be happy to answer as well. So just thinking about support, and this doesn't have to be formal. It could be a friend who breastfeeds, it could be your grandma, it could be your neighbor, and your partners, thinking about them, and then the formal supports that Laura and Rachel have also already mentioned. But in Laura's example of the latching, I mean, you could help position the baby, making sure that hand's out of the way, so they also don't break the latch, because sometimes that happens. And then getting like your encouraging text messages, and maybe even writing them to yourself on the mirror in your bathroom and things like that. I think I had I think there was some quote I had on the screensaver on my phone, to keep saying, this is what we can do. Changing diapers, that's a great time to hand off, doing some skin to skin while you're like showering or doing something else of care to yourself. What's that? Napping, yes. And then bringing, your support items. I don't really need anybody to bring me them. I just need them right here. So making sure it's stocked is another thing, not just bringing them to you. And then just trying to divvy up tasks if you can, share the load. So, yeah. Let's see. Did you have something else? Go for it. The massage.
And it's my thing to make them all get a massage 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So get a massage from your support.
Let's see. So this is one place where a lot of the pediatrician can come in to, not only our breastfeeding clinics and the WIC office and things like that, but sleep and breastfeeding. I think there's often a misconception that babies are supposed to sleep through the night. That's not actually that normal. And I would say oftentimes that's where things maybe get a little bit interrupted. So all babies are different. You need to talk to someone about whether that's appropriate or not. So it is often and very common to see that babies will kind of be switched a little bit. So be awake more at night and do their cluster feeding, especially in those early days. And then that can switch, and often does, but takes a little while. And then napping while baby's napping. And then there's different positions. Obviously, Laura couldn't show you a side lying position today. Maybe she will. But there are ways to do breastfeeding safely in different positions and related to sleep. But you just need to make sure that you are not falling asleep with your baby attached to you or in your bed with you, as that's not a safe position to be in. So there are different groups that may think that there is some bed sharing and things like that are appropriate. I would say culturally there are differences with that, and so as a medical professional or a support person, we need to be mindful of those and be sensitive to that. But number one is just making sure that the baby is safe, and then obviously the parent is safe too in that situation. So anything else to add there? Okay. Did you want to take wellness, Rachel, or I don't mind doing it? Okay. So this kind of couples with what we were just talking about as far as taking care of yourself, having someone to support you or setting up that support so that it's not every time you're feeding, but something's in place so that you feel like you can do this. And so making sure you're taking care of yourself, giving to yourself, because then you're giving a lot to that baby and your family with doing this. Eating well. So the breastfeeding clinic helped me quite a bit with, obviously we know we need to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and have lots of snacks and things like that, but hydration is a really big thing. So they have some suggestions on what to use for those things. There's Laura's message about the massage. Getting outside, there's often safe ways to do that, even with newborns. And so it could, as long as you're safe and cleared by your OB to do that activity, then just sitting on the porch could be nice too. So babies appreciate that as well. And then I think, I know there's the breathing exercises and meditation, but one of the things that I think is really important, and especially if you are outside of that prenatal care, OB care type of umbrella, a lot of the postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety is seen outside of that setting. So I would say breastfeeding clinics, yes, WIC office, yes, but your pediatrician's office, and then the other supports around you, because you have your 6-week follow-up with your OB, and then that's kind of your last appointment with them for a long time, right? And so thinking about where else to get that support and talk about the feelings that you're having, because there are, the range of things with like baby blues and things like that, but the pediatrician can be a great place to bring up some of those feelings. And depending on the doc that you're with, that's a question that most of us will ask at those early visits as well, and do screenings for it. I'm going to pause and just make sure. Are there any questions as we've been going? Anything? Okay. Please feel free to interrupt us. All right. So pumps, and there's an awesome note up here that insurance should cover the cost of a pump for you. I don't think that there's been any big changes with that recently. I will say that you may not be able to get like the wearable pump by just completely covered, but usually they will cover the cost of the standard pump, and then you can pay the difference if that's something that you're interested in. So there's different ones that you can see up here. The manual pumps, and a lot of people are familiar with like the Haka, which is one of those more suction-based, like manual. You actually have to do the suction. And then there's a good old hand pump too. Don't forget about that. Good one for your purse. And then the electric pumps, you all have probably seen multiple of these. And then wearables are really popular. However, they are, I would say, expensive. And then sometimes I think you just have to be aware that you may not respond to the pump the same way you respond to your baby. And it may be a different pump that works better for you. And that's also where like checking your flange sizes. I think I had one boob that needed a different flange size than the other. So it feels a little bit silly to be that, but it was necessary for me. And then it all depends on the situation, but limiting pumping until breastfeeding is well established if we can. Like Rachel mentioned, her baby was a late preterm, so there might be a need for pumping earlier in her situation, but trying to make sure that we try to establish direct breastfeeding before entering into pumping if possible. And then some notes about timing as far as when to do that. I think another one to add would be that I think the return to work, and this kind of flows into that a little bit, but you don't have to have a stocked freezer. Those are the moms we often hear about that have like this huge supply and this and that. But really, you just need enough for that first day back, because then when you're at work, you're going to make the next day. So it's not if you have that, then lovely. But that can sometimes come with its own challenges as well. But I will also just add to that too. Pumping seems like it's something you absolutely have to do, but we're feeding baby first. Baby gets the milk first. It doesn't go straight to the freezer. There are situations where that might be necessary, but I've seen a handful of mamas who are so stressed by the fact that they need to have freezer milk that the baby actually has lost some weight because they're doing more of that storage than feeding the baby directly. And so once that's corrected, then it works itself out. Anything else?
Yeah, I just like to comment on the pumps because people, when you go to order your pump through insurance, often the first pumps that come up are going to be wearable because that's what's most popular right now. But many of us professionals have found that really those wearable pumps are not going to do the work you need to establish the supply. They may be fine for kind of like secondary use, like not your primary pump, once your milk is well established within a few weeks. So typically, like what our first, in my clinic, what our first preference would be is like a Spectra. That's probably my favorite pump, honestly, because it just has durability and a good long life to it, and people can use that same motor with multiple children, like my next baby and my next baby. You just replace the pieces. So I do think it's important to ask, if you don't know what kind of pump should I order, reach out to the support systems and find out what's the, not just the most popular, but maybe the most effective on this list of options I have. We found that the newer version of Medela is not as good as their older version, so it's not at the top of my list anymore, but it is still better than some others. And then there's also some on my list that I didn't put up here, but I would be like, no, don't get that one. So I think it's good just to know you can ask those questions. If you aren't going to have to return to work, it's possible that you can get by with what you need on the manual pump or that passive milk saver like a Haka, and that you're really just maybe saving that for a date night or a day of shopping by yourself or something like that. So again, we're feeding the baby, not the freezer, and we don't want to overwhelm your body with thinking you're feeding the whole neighborhood by doing breastfeeding and pumping and all the things if there's not a reason to do that. Different story with a 36-week baby who's going to need some extra easy calories, but that's why it's important to go to those checkups and contact those support people who can help you figure out what's best for you and your baby. So yeah, wearable maybe down the road, but I suggest you get one that plugs in for initiating everything if you're going to need something like that. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember.
No,
so
that's okay.
I'm going to leave it there.
Go for it. I will say I have some experience with the Willow and I mean there's all kinds of there's like these really cool contraptions. The motor is actually in the pump itself, and so there's lots of confusion on what goes in where when you wash things, and so it's a learning curve, but but my tried and true is a Spectra as well.
I think what I was going to say is about the sizing. So lots of the wearables come with every insert size possible, and it's really important that you have that checked, because it's not just, you can't just use the ruler and put it over your nipple and say, oh, I'm a 19. There's part of that tissue that needs to be included in the measurement that isn't necessarily everted. It's just part of the base where it connects to the breast. So I think it's good to have somebody help you make sure it's the right size, so you don't end up with nipple damage or less milk production or output because it's too big or too small. So have that checked before you get going. And it could be different the day after you deliver because of swelling than it will be in 2 or 3 weeks. So keep checking if it's not working well.
I don't know if you want to do this one. No, that's okay. I think just, well, do you have anything specific about bottles as far as that goes? I mean,
I was more just sharing that there's just a million options.
Yes.
And new parents never know what to buy. One of the questions I get as a car seat technician is, what's the best car seat? And our answer is, what's the best fit for your child? It's not a certain brand that's best. And I think that that's important to know about bottling as well. So it could be glass bottles, plastic bottles. It can be a wide base nipple or a narrow nipple like that. They have valves in Dr. Brown's bottles that decrease the air, so it's like a vent to help them maybe not be as fussy or uncomfortable. Avent's anti-colic also has that. The Avent natural flow nipple, I've had a lot of challenges with a lot of babies because it comes with their super slow one. And for some babies, I think that's too much work. They give up on it, they're too tired, they don't finish it. But they have 5 different flow rates, and maybe you just need a next level of that and could still use that system, or maybe your baby needs a totally different one. So that's another thing that is going to be, I think, better supported by somebody watching the baby feed and helping you know what cues are saying this is too slow or too fast. So I don't think you should buy 500 bottles. I think you should buy one and try that, and then change if you need to. And once breastfeeding's well established, offering the bottles at least a few times a week, like 3 times in a week, might be enough for them to recognize how to do both, so that they're not refusing a bottle when you do have to be away from them. My mom babysits, my mom's here, she's a lactation consultant too, runs in the family. But she babysat all my babies while I would work, and I was very lucky that she has her knowledge, because she's like, this one is not working, or you got to give him a pacifier so I can comfort him because I can't latch him on.
I think you mentioned pacifier. I think that's a good one to maybe throw in with this, is that, again, all situations are different. So ask the question to know if it's appropriate to do that for your kiddo at certain ages in their little life. But typically that is something that is also recommended to see if we can establish breastfeeding well before introducing that. But I will also tell you that as far as information that I give to my parents, if they are losing their minds because the baby is well fed and they had a diaper change and they're, just need comforted that way, and mom doesn't want to be the pacifier this time, as long as the baby's eating well and you have offered boob first, or breast milk in a bottle or however, then it's okay to do that. I think when we do risk benefit with that, I think your sanity is more important when it comes to certain things like that. So anything else to add there?
That permission is good, because a car ride, you're not leaning over the car seat to nurse the baby while you drive the car. Like, I tell them, limit it until it's well established. If you need to get out of the bathroom before you feed, it's okay for someone to give a pacifier for a few minutes.
All right. Returning to work. I returned to work when my first was 3 months old. And then my second one, I returned when she was 6 weeks old. So plan ahead, visit with your employer about where and when you need to pump, at least every 3 hours. I did every 2 hours. But I mean, whatever works for you. And honestly, it also kind of depends on the job that you have. I mean, you have a right to breastfeed. You have a right to have a place to breastfeed, or pump and breastfeed, both. But making sure that you are communicating before you go back, or maybe the day of. I mean, that's what I did. I did it the day of. But just having a plan in place. Pack your pump and supplies the night before if it's possible. I had 2 pumps, so I had one at my job and then I had one at home, so I didn't have to transport it back and forth all day. And if I forgot it at home, God forbid, that would have been bad. Bring snacks and water. Hydration is important. Nutrition is important. Keeping that milk going. Cooler bag and ice packs to store your expressed milk. I usually kept mine in a lunch bag in the work fridge. I had a complaint one time about that from another employee, and I was just like, oh no. So you are allowed to do that. And if they don't want you to do that, then they need to give you a place to store that. That's just part of it, is what it is, and you have to do what you have to do. Pumping bra or wearable pump to be hands-free. Oh, that reminds me, I wanted to talk about the wearable pump. I used that when I went back after my second to try it out. I thought it was really cool. And I've always been an oversupplier, and my supply dropped. I was only getting an ounce at a time, and I can easily pump 5 to 8 ounces per side. So I cried and I called the breastfeeding clinic at Saints, and I was like, hey, something's wrong. And so I stopped using that pump, and then she sized me and gave me different sizes, and it was all fine, and we're all back to normal. But just, number one, making sure you're established before you use that, which I was well established. However, it just might not be a fit for you. And so if you're using it and it's not getting what you need it to get, and it just might be the pump. So videos and pictures of your baby to help with expression. I used to do that. I had a video of my baby cooing at me when I first went back to work, and that's probably where a lot of where it came from. I mean, it helps a lot that your body responds to your baby making noises, the smell of your baby, that type of thing. Your baby may want to cluster feed when you get home. They miss you. Yeah, it's not a maybe. They're going to want to cluster feed. Babies, they feed on, when you're breastfeeding, it's best to feed on demand. And that could be every 3 hours for 20 minutes at a time. That could be every 5 minutes for an hour at a time. I mean, there's no scale to it. I have breastfed for 2 minutes every 20 minutes. It's just, there is no way to gauge a schedule. So, but yeah, I think the most important part for that is just making sure you're communicating your needs with your employer, making sure that you have the ability to meet those needs and know your rights, that you have the right to pump and take those breaks and even breastfeed at work and have a place to do that. So that's the gist of that.
I was just going to say, there's not a bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah, you do not have to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
Correct.
That is, no, you are allowed to have a room or an office or whatever that does not have a toilet in it. That is allowed.
Free from intrusion, so a door, the privacy that you deserve to have that space to pump while you're away. There are several of these cards on the table. If you have, friends or family, staff, patients that may benefit from it, you're welcome to take some of those for them as well. And along with that, there's also you have the right to breastfeed anywhere that you have the right to be card. So take those and share those as well. I was going to say that some people will see a larger amount of expressed milk on Monday back to work and less on Friday. And then you're home with your baby all weekend who nurses on demand, and Monday it's back up again. So it is normal to see varying amounts of expressed milk, but if there's a drastic difference like that, you normally can get 5 to 8 ounces and you're getting 1 to 2. We need to make sure that there's not something wrong with the fit or the machine itself. Sometimes you need to replace pieces on it, or it's just the motor. So it's better to get that checked out sooner than later so you don't end up with a breast infection or a dip in supply that you're then working really hard to get back up. And the flange size is, like Dr. McIntosh said, 2 different sizes. We're talking millimeters different. It's very, very specific to each person, and I think it's important to know that can be different at all times, or at different days.
Also, this doesn't really have anything to do with this, but it kind of has to do with the latch. When my first was born, I talked about how she struggled to latch. I didn't know that there was things such as nipple shields. I found that out very quickly, thankfully, and we had to use a nipple shield for about 2 weeks. And I just want to let people know, if you have to use a nipple shield, you're not failing. It doesn't mean you have to use it forever. It's a wonderful tool. It's helped me make sure that I could breastfeed her for over 3 years. So just wanted to throw that out there because I forgot to mention that earlier.
Yeah, and I think the key to that is the weaning from it. So you don't want to use a shield for months because then you can have struggles with it. So making sure that while you need it, you have it, and then you get the help to get to
trying and practicing without it first, and then putting it on when you need it. That's
keeping it happy. If your baby is frustrated and struggling, use it. You don't want it to be a negative, experience there where they instantly get mad when you try to put them back to the breast again.
Oh, you have the. I didn't grab. I don't know if it's me anyway. I don't think the next one's me. Yeah, this is not me. This is stressful. That one's stressful.
That's okay. So I know you mentioned it being stressful, but introducing solids should be a very happy and exciting thing. I would say with social media though, and just different journeys, it can be stressful, and kids pick up on that as far as our stress during mealtime. So as much as we can try to relax with it, that's the best case scenario, but not everybody goes that way, right? So it is recommended by the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, to wait until 6 months to introduce solids if you're exclusively breastfeeding. That being said, again, this is a conversation with your pediatrician or your family medicine doc about, is it appropriate? I mean, my kid's 4.5 months old and she's going for it. And so maybe it is appropriate developmentally to do that. So like I said, it's just, all of this is just really about having those conversations to see what's appropriate and when. So watching you eat, watching you bring your fork to your mouth, or them starting to put objects in their mouth or bringing their hands to their mouth, and then reaching for items. If they're able to sit up, I think the formal recommendation is that they're supposed to be sitting without support at all to do solids. That's not really real life as far as development goes. Typically that's actually closer to like 7 months of age plus. So if they're able to sit, usually what I recommend in my office is if they're able to sit with support without a lot of the head bobbing, and developmentally they're appropriate, with showing you some of these interest cues, then that would be an okay time, as long as weight's looking good and things like that. So one thing also to note is that this introducing solids doesn't take the place of breastfeeding when you start to do this. It really not until closer to 9 months when you start to get more food and maybe less breast milk intake. So your breastfeeding schedule doesn't typically change this early. You're still doing all of that plus adding the introduction of solids. So yeah, is that okay? Okay. I forgot to grab it. You're fine. So Laura's got it up there for us. So offer breast milk first and then solids, which I think is a good rule of thumb. And then if they still want to go back for some more breast milk, then that's fine. You'll see lots of different things. Again, I think our era of social media makes it very difficult for us to get good information. It doesn't mean that what's out there isn't good, but you have to have a critical eye sometimes about safety when it comes to solids. So oftentimes in some of the earlier babies, you can make or buy purees, and that's a nice way to introduce textures and flavors to your baby. There is baby-led weaning as well, which is gaining popularity, and I hear that a lot in my office. I would say no way is right and no way is wrong. And honestly, I feel like you kind of do a little bit of both in a way, depending on how old your kid is and what their interest is. So typically a couple of tablespoons here and there throughout the day, have them sit up with you at mealtime. And so they kind of get like, okay, this is what we do. We eat. And this is what it looks like when we do it. And then there's some suggested foods there. My kind of piece of information for that would be, obviously you want to avoid choking hazards. And this is also something that, you are in charge of this process for your child. So if you have a family member or oftentimes a grandma who is really excited to give your kid something, this is where you can say, no, I'm doing it this way. You can often blame it on your pediatrician. I usually offer that, as long as it's appropriate, to say, no, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to follow this. But avoiding choking hazards, there's some things about, like introducing allergenic foods and the timing of that. But the big thing is, if you need a guideline, there are some guidelines from different organizations as far as what foods to do when and things like that, different textures. If that's helpful to you, then fine. But typically it just needs to be a safe item for their developmental age.
So the thing I tell people is that the term, because it's getting more popular, baby-led weaning, it's a very confusing term. You mentioned already that you're still breastfeeding the baby. So I think that's an important thing as somebody who's supporting moms who are feeding, to make sure they understand that the priority is still the breast milk at this stage. And then the other thing that we we know is that at 6 months their iron stores start to be a little bit lower, and so introducing meats as one of the earlier foods is also a good way to help get that iron into them. Personally, I always felt like the iron fortified cereals were harder to get them to take because just gross. Like, I'm not interested. I mean, aside from my breast milk being in there, it's not real exciting. So you could maybe mix it with something to help if you're needing to get more that way. And obviously there are other foods if you, follow a vegetarian diet or something. There are other ways to get that, that source into them too. But talking with your provider would be probably the best place to start. And then on this next slide, it did have some things in case that helps with what you were talking about with avoiding.
So a couple things I was going to mention just for general knowledge, and this is a little bit more than what we really need to get into, but it is pertinent. So there is a recommendation to introduce allergenic foods earlier now. So it used to be wait until a year of age. Now it's actually somewhere between 4 and 6 months of age. So for an exclusively breastfed baby, that would be, one of the earlier foods that you could offer. And what's typically in there that would be appropriate would be like dairy items, so not cow's milk, because that's still not until 12 months, but like yogurt and cheeses and things like that. Nut butters and then egg would be the main ones to think about when you're doing that. So, and then I think we've talked about some of this, sitting together at a table if you can, to eat as a family, and maybe that's just dinner time, and that's the time that you guys can swing it, but it doesn't have to. It'd be lovely if we could all do that every meal, but that's not realistic for most families. So maybe making it a priority for that dinner time meal to be what that is. And then allowing them to just explore. It takes a while for them to get to like strawberry or whatever it is that you offer. And I usually say like a cracker is a cracker is a cracker. Like it's going to taste the same each time you give it. But strawberries, blueberries, things like that vary as far as like when they're picked, which store you bought them from, what time of year is it? So being realistic in that we're expecting babies to kind of do what we do, but we've had a lot of experience in this. Babies really haven't at all. So giving them a little bit of grace when it comes to introduction of these things. So mixing in breast milk, like Laura had mentioned, you can do the iron fortified cereals, but also into just like a puree or something else that you're offering. And then the sippy cup offering that with meals. There are some things that she's got listed here to avoid. So honey and cow's milk are the things to avoid until 12 months of age, but then choking hazards. And then, you had yogurt up there, which I think is a great one, but we don't want to do like the strawberry banana yogurt so much. Maybe we put in like a strawberry puree or something like that to give it some sweetness versus doing those sugar heavy options. So just a note there.
And that is something that's so surprising if you ever go and look at yogurt on the label at the store and you realize that what you thought was a healthy snack is actually just completely sugar. So Yo Baby, I forgot to Google it. Does anybody know if Yo Baby's still available? So what I fed this one who's 18. But Yo Baby is a fat-heavy yogurt intended to be not as sugary so that they're not expecting that full sweetness, but they maybe enjoy it. And then Greek yogurt's another good way to get some protein too. And I just like to add that, they will be messier they're going to get more on them than in them. So if we're prepared for depending what kind of food I'm offering, we might need a bath after this. And if you go into it with the patience of knowing this is going to be a messy experience and that's okay, they explore through play and textures and all of that, and they're going to be more likely to accept all these things if we're not frustrated and grumpy that don't put it in your hair. I really wanted to put the video I found of my baby when he was like 13 months, I think, and he was picking up avocado slices and putting them on his head and laughing. But I was like, this can't be all about my babies. But it was, so then we're laughing, and first he was picking up French fries and putting them there, and then he went for the avocado, and my husband and I both in the background go, no, because we're like, that's the good stuff, eat that one. But we startled him, and then he stopped, and he went for the French fry instead, and then we let him put the avocado and gave him a bath. So just, be prepared to have fun with it. And then this is a cup that, again, my mom found, worked really great. It's a little silicone cup and straw. That one had, little nubbies on the end of it so they could kind of play with it. you know, I think it's important that if you're letting them take a drink of something that you have, it's not a soda or, you know, like sugary drink. But knowing that you can help them not shove that thing too deep by kind of creating how much space they can use for that. This is a nice soft and short straw, so they're less likely to end up poking themselves or getting hurt by using like a plastic straw. I feel like there was one more thing, but I don't know what it was, so do you have more on that one?
Don't necessarily need to do that part today. Any questions on that? It's kind of a bigger topic. Okay. Oh, okay. Great.
Where we wanted to open it up to just like conversation, like questions you might have about anything specific, or comments or stories or anything anybody would like to share. Wyatt would like to share that he's reading a book. Yes.
Yogurt. So her question is about what other items, like dairy items outside of cow's milk, that you can introduce prior to a year of age. So yogurt and cheeses. It could be like milk baked into things. So there's, I mean, ice cream's in there too, but I wouldn't suggest doing a bunch of that. But that's where grandma comes in, right?
Yep.
So, so does that help a little bit? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There can be many more calories in 1 ounce of breast milk than there can be in 1 ounce of formula. So a formula-fed baby may end up on 8 ounces per feeding, where a breastfed baby may be happy at 4. Lots of breastfed babies kind of level at a 4 ounce bottle. Some of them want 5 or 6. Some of them are little tanks, you know, they're ready for all of it. And also each person is different. So my milk may have less fat than your milk, and my baby may eat more frequently because of that. And so I think it's important to know that it's specific to each baby, and your amount may be what's exactly right for your baby, but completely different than the influencer who says you have to drink Dr. Pepper and eat Oreos to make more milk, where I would have been the queen of like milk making if that was real. So you just have to know that it's different for each person.
I think the only thing I was going to add too is that your supply at some point is going to kind of normalize, right? So you get the kind of the big surges within that first couple of months, or not, I shouldn't say big surges, the larger amounts potentially as you're getting established. And then, I mean, your boobs don't really change. They kind of stay the same, right? That's kind of how I think of it when it comes to like how a formula fed baby may continue their amount. Our boobs are kind of making the same amount.
They have a certain capacity. Yes. Like this is what they can hold.
So, but just keeping that in mind too, that just because your supply may normalize at some point doesn't mean that it's not working, and it's still likely what your baby needs.
And when it does normalize and you don't feel engorged or swollen, it doesn't mean you've lost your milk. It means you're at that stage where it's more natural feeling and looking, and you still have that capacity and all of that milk for the baby. And that's why those check-ins are important. So if you're not going to see, like, I think probably that first big gap between pediatrician visits is from 6 months to 9 months, come into a clinic and get a weight check done. WIC, breastfeeding clinic at Stormont, at St. Francis, wherever, so that we can help you check in and see that that growth is on track, even though those numbers will be different at that age than at, you know, a newborn level of a half an ounce to an ounce of gain per day, maybe a quarter of an ounce to a half an ounce a day of gain, because they're busy and they're rolling and they're moving, and yeah, different things.
Does mom have to be a prior patient of one of the hospitals to go into the breastfeeding clinic, or how can she access?
That's a great question.
Can you repeat it so that like the online?
Yes, so she was asking if people have to have been a patient at those hospitals to come to the breastfeeding clinic. So Stormont specifically, you do not have to have delivered there or have been a patient there. We do have a one-time fee of $35 if you deliver elsewhere. We're often able to be flexible with that because we know that some families aren't able to to afford that. So specifically if a pediatrician or family practice provider refers them to us, we often won't charge that fee because they specifically said this person, you know, needs help and I want them to come to you for it. And then if you do deliver there, then it's free to come as much as you want. After that one-time fee, if you delivered elsewhere, you can come every single day if you want to. I mean, it's just, I think the thing I want people to know about our clinic is that it's not just those first few weeks when we keep saying, do you want to come back? Do you want to schedule your next one? We want you to come back when you start solids or if you're returning to work or at some point weaning, you know, we want to help with the whole journey. And so even if you haven't seen us in months, you can call and make an appointment and come back. I know Mandy's not here, but is somebody from Saints able to speak to their clinic services? So I can't answer that part specifically if they see anyone who didn't deliver there.
I mean, I don't know about Saints, but I was just wondering if you also offer that the hospitals welcome you to call with questions.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I think that all of the hospitals welcome you to call with questions.
Mm-hmm.
Stormont Vale, you can just call into the clinic. Saints, you can call into the clinic. I work at Children's Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
We offer that support for as long as a mom is on her journey and providing milk. So even if you can't come in and get a weight check, they can probably talk you through something, and then maybe you can call your pediatrician and say, can I just come in and get a weight check? And most pediatricians' office are happy to let you do that.
Yes. Thank you. Good point.
I guess I can't speak specifically for working at St. Francis, but I delivered at St. Francis and then went to the breastfeeding clinic like every other day because I was so anxious about my 38-weeker gaining weight. So I was worried about him, and you know, his latch was really bad at the beginning, and we did a lot of like hand expressing and just like spoon feeding almost because he was so tired. Like he just would not latch and stay latched for a long time, and I had to use the nipple shield like on and off for like the first 6 to 8 weeks. Like it was bad.
Long time. Yeah.
A long time. But then he ended up breastfeeding till 20 months, and it was like totally
awesome.
easy and fine after that tough part. So there were definitely moments where like I could have quit and you wanted to quit, but like if you really want to make it work, you can if you have that support. And I don't believe we had any fee for the first days clinic at the St. Francis at the hospital, but and they encouraged us to come back. But I know every single newborn has their like jaundice check at their clinic, so I know that first appointment is there, and then they encourage you to come back as much as you want and are so sweet about it, and they are just great there. They helped me through all of those
That's great.
trials and tribulations with the latch and pumping and coming back to work. I used to work here. I worked here, and they were so great with pumping and giving me all those breaks and stuff. So yeah, just like getting that support, like your community, and asking for that when you need it is so important. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Any other questions?
I was going to say one other thing, as we're talking about latches and things, breastfeeding can be, because you're learning, your body is learning, you are learning, it's a new something right there.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be uncomfortable, and that doesn't mean that it's the latch necessarily, too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because I have that conversation somewhere, it's like, oh, this really hurts. And yeah, I mean, it's uncomfortable because like they don't know what to do yet. They need to practice, and our nipples they're not conditioned, I will say, for that particular type of insult. So just, I mean, and that's where I think asking the question is a good one, because I think that's a normalization that we should make, is that sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean that's a fail.
And when your baby detaches, your nipple should be round pretty much. If it's creased or pinched or looks kind of like the tip of lipstick, those are some signs that it was a shallow latch. And so that's another indication, like maybe that's why it's hurting so much. But the colostrum's so thick, I don't know where this saying came from. I don't know who did this test, but I remember from like when I very first started learning all of this, they compared it to like drinking a milkshake through a straw. Like you got to get the flow started and then it comes more freely. Again, who came up? I don't know, but and then as the milk increases in volume and it becomes a little more fluid, it kind of flows more freely, almost like water through a straw. So I think even with a good latch, when that's thick first milk and these babies are like, where's my placenta? I'm hungry. Then you may have tenderness that's just because it's a new, experience. So there's creams that can be helpful in making sure that the position is good and the latch is good is at the top of that priority list. Anybody else? Yeah.
No, you're fine. I have a lot of questions.
Go for it.
This is gonna be my first
Yes.
experience. So, like, you mentioned nipple shields. I don't even know what that is, and like, will they tell you if you need one? Is that something you should automatically buy?
No, don't go
Okay.
buy it. The hospitals typically will have it and can bring it to you if you need that
Okay.
for help. It's like a little plastic nipple that can go over yours to help the baby maintain a latch. And they can be helpful. Sometimes I think they're given because a baby is tired, and so it looks like they're still latched, but really they're just sleeping with it in their mouth. So I think it's important to make sure somebody's helping you to say, do we need this right now, or is it one that? And then sometimes when a breast is so engorged, it's like my friend at work will say it's like the side of a basketball. Like the nipple disappears and the baby just like slips and slips and slips.
Okay.
So there are things you can do to massage and relieve some of that pressure, and maybe they'll latch without it. But that often is when I think a lot of people end up with a shield, is it helps the baby drain a little bit and then they can pop it off and try to go back on.
Okay.
So we could give it to you at either facility if
Okay.
you needed it.
Okay. Tongue tie was kind of mentioned.
Mhm.
I've had a friend that happened with their baby, and so like, also like that affected their breastfeeding journey. So I'm like, how do you know that, and will that be part of like the lactation consultants? They'll tell you those things.
Yeah, the hospital should assess that, like even the nursery nurse who assesses the baby at their first check, which ideally will be after the first breastfeeding. So if you're having trouble with that first latch, somebody may step in and do that assessment sooner, but we try not to separate you if we can avoid it. So the full-on kind of head-to-toe thing may come afterward. But yeah, we'll check for that, let you know if it's a problem, and if you continue to have issues with latch, make sure that you have somebody come and look at the baby and you and help with that.
Okay.
Pediatricians can help assess that as well, and then get you to the place where if it needs to be addressed, that's the time to do it.
Mhm.
A few more.
Go for it.
I've also had a friend that had a recent baby, and they had acid reflux. So I was like, how did you know that that's different than just like normal? What does it spit up? I don't know what they do after you burp them. Like, how do you tell
I'll
the
let
difference?
you answer that, Dr. McIntosh.
So I will say all babies have reflux to some degree. I mean, they have immature systems that we're trying to get to work right away, right? We have these expectations that they're just going to be clean little snuggly balls of skin, and they're not. They're messy, and they're snorty and loud. And so I would expect that all babies are going to spit some. And this is a conversation with your doctor too, is it interfering with feeding? Like, are they pulling back and they're so uncomfortable? Are they super gassy? They're going to be, but is that coupled with like poor weight gain? Are you having stool changes and things like that? So there are ways to address it. I will say, I don't know. It's almost never the breast milk. I would say, I mean, there are like cow's milk protein intolerances and things like that for a mom who loves cheese and coffee, and, and so sometimes that's something that we have to address with some dietary changes. That's even pretty, I mean, it's not very common, but I will say, because moms often worry that it's their milk causing the issue, and usually it's not. Yep.
I've also seen when a person has a very abundant milk supply, sometimes you're just so full, it's coming very quickly, and they're like, how do I keep up with it? And then they end up drinking quickly, and air bubbles come in with it, and when that bubble comes up, so does food. So there's also position changes that may make that less likely to happen. And typically, if they're gaining weight, but they're spitty, probably don't worry about it. Just carry extra clothes for yourself, too. You change your shirt after the grocery store.
So you kind of talked about lactose or something, but you're saying it's rarely mom's milk is causing issues for baby.
Yeah, there's I'm just just so we can catch it. So the question was about like lactose and the intolerance or sensitivity to that for a baby from mom. And I mean, it happens, but I don't think that there's just a handful in my experience. I've been a pediatrician in practice going into my 8th year, but only a handful that have had to like switch to formula because it was so severe that they had such severe symptoms that they couldn't gain weight well, and it was impacting their development, things like that. So oftentimes, I mean, we can assess for that, but it's not very common. So, and I will tell you, those dietary changes, we can make them and have some good success, but they're miserable if we don't have to. So talk to someone before you make those changes.
Yeah.
Especially if you like dairy.
Right?
I love milk.
Pizza.
The last one is like clogged ducts or the mastitis. Like, I don't know. My sister had it when she was pregnant and had to go to the breastfeeding clinic, and I know that they had to get it cleared really like in a painful way. So I want to avoid that. Is there ways that you can do that? Is it the cold compress, hot compress? Like what?
So
what should
definitely
you do?
consistently emptying is like key. I think it tends to happen when somebody ends up going a longer stretch between feeds, or they wear a different bra that's pushing into a spot, or they have an improper flange size that's not emptying their breast if they're away from the baby. And actually, we do recommend ice typically for that rather than heat. I mean, heat may feel comfortable, but I tell people really let's try the ice first, because there's inflammation all around those milk cells, which is narrowing the path for the milk to flow. And if we can reduce that inflammation, we may be able to just clear it with that next feeding. And then the other thing that they say really we should be avoiding is not like digging into that spot, massaging, because then you're creating more inflammation. So it's just kind of persisting, perpetuating that problem. So instead, you can do some lymphatic drainage, and there's a few different things. But my favorite, when I heard a surgeon speak about this a few years ago, she said, you're going to start, and I always show lots of us will just do it on ourselves. So I try to do it with my arms so I don't make people uncomfortable. So you're going to start at your nipple and gently sweep and pet away. She said with the pressure, you would pet a cat. And I love cats. So if you don't love cats, then you don't know how to pet one, let me know. But that gentle pressure and sweeping away from the nipple can also reduce some of that extra swelling and make it easier for the milk to flow. There's, like a certain supplement that some people will take if they're super prone to it. Rachel had quite a reaction when you said mastitis, so I think she's probably had some experiences.
I've had clogged ducts.
You got it.
I've had quite a few clogged ducts. I've only had mastitis one time, luckily, and it made me extremely sick. I had to be on antibiotics for, I think it was 3 of them, for 7 or 10. It was a lot. But I do the feeding on demand. I pumped when I was still pumping. It only happened because I had gone to a girls' night out, and so I had stayed the night away from my baby, and I didn't take a pump, and yeah, so I got it, and I thought it was just the clogged duct at first, and I'm sure it was, and then it got infected and turned into mastitis. So it's extremely painful. The clogged duct hurts, but not as bad as mastitis, and mastitis gives you sometimes cold symptoms and everything like that. But I didn't even have to go in and get checked out. They just asked my symptoms, asked me specific questions, and then they prescribed me the antibiotics. So really, you start to feel better after like a day or two of being on the antibiotics. I mean, obviously you need to finish them, but it's not going to be the whole 10 days before you feel better.
Most of the time you'll feel better within 24 hours, but if we can treat that plugged duct with the ice and the lymphatic drainage and maybe some ibuprofen or Tylenol if you're able to take that, then you may not get to that point of mastitis. And honestly, with these kind of adjustments in the last few years to how we manage a plugged duct, we don't have to treat it with antibiotics near as often. So a couple points I want to say is if you do have flu-like symptoms, a fever, redness on the breast, it's really hot, painful, then you may have mastitis and you may have the infection that's requiring antibiotics at that point. But we recommend you go through your OB provider because they can specifically treat to those symptoms, and often they use a different antibiotic than an urgent care will, or you don't typically need an emergency room visit for that kind of thing. That would be pretty extreme. So call your OB if you do have those symptoms, but call a clinic first so that we can remind you how to manage it before it gets to that point, maybe you won't have that
Yeah,
misery.
I was never taught how to handle a clog. I've had a lot of clogged ducts, and I just I would get a heating pad.
Yeah,
So
which we
And-
used
and,
to
like,
do forever. We always
real
said
hard,
heat and massage.
just trying to get it out, and then I didn't know. So
And
good to
science is
know.
always changing, and we've learned actually it's better to do the opposite of what we were doing, and people are better now. So yeah, call and ask. Could be different in, probably not, but 6 months. Yes. Any other questions before we wrap up? What you got, Linda? Yes, take as many handouts as you'd like from there. Let us know if you have questions. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you
Thank
being
you so
here and
much.
joining us and sharing the love of breastfeeding support.